Good morning, Claire.
Good morning.
Welcome to Uncommonly Commons.
Thank you.
The whole point of this podcast is talking to your younger self, and which would help people like who are new in the industry, trying to learn about how to how to make the growth better, or
Right.
how to understand how this corporate world works, and from your experiences, what can they pick up?
Okay.
It's mostly talking to yourself.
Yep.
If you were back in the day at the starting stage,
Okay.
what would you do differently?
Okay.
So this idea came because I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering,
Yes.
and I always saw there's this gap. Like even whenever I talk to people about the future, like I like to think ahead, but no one gave me a clear answer. Again, I was doing my research. You did internships. I had an engineering job as well.
Yeah.
So had I known that before, I would have changed my stream to IT back then.
Okay.
So that's where the idea came from.
Yes.
So now, like you're a AVP, you like to mentor people. I think there's no one better than you to kind of give us this advice or get us started.
Okay. I'm happy to share my experience and hopefully it's helpful for some people.
Thank you. For the audience, just tell us something about yourself.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Canada, but we did live for a few years in England. So growing up, I had the opportunity to live in both countries.
Okay.
My parents emigrated to Canada from England back in the 70s. So like many probably of your audience and many of our peers, working very hard to establish themselves in a new country, with a very strong work ethic and building that foundation and raising a family. So I'm married with two children. My daughter's in her last year of high school and my son is in his third year at university. In terms of my background and a little bit about my parents, they're both extremely hardworking individuals, as many immigrants are. Really dedicated, compassionate people with a really strong sense of ownership and accountability. And I think as I'm sharing this with you, I think you're probably thinking, oh, that sounds a lot like Claire, which is, our parents are a big influence on our lives. So family has always and continues to be very important for them and for us. We're really there for one another and see each other quite regularly. So I grew up in a very loving and supportive family, and my parents have been a very integral part of my life, but also of my children's, which we're very grateful for. And I would say my upbringing has shaped my life profoundly. Many of these values that I just talked about were instilled within me at a very early age.
Okay.
And they've become a big part of both my personal and my professional life, right? Because the two are
Yeah,
very
yeah.
closely melded, as we know.
I never knew that you were in England as well. That's new.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So for not a super long time, but for about 4 years.
Okay.
So I was born here. We lived here for a few years, and my brother was born here. Then we moved to England
Okay.
with the intention to stay. And my dad's an engineer as well by trade. So at the time, the economy wasn't great.
Okay.
So we did stay for a period of time, which was lovely because we had our extended family, which was something we don't have in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it was a very difficult decision for them to come back. But ultimately, I think they felt, and I think what we've seen come to fruition is that we probably have had a better life here. We've had more opportunities, my brother and I. So, but I know that's a very, very tough decision to make because it's a trade-off, right? Being, as you know, being away from your extended family is not easy.
So when I came here, right, like I didn't know the importance of family at all. I came as a kid, like I was 19 years old, and that time I was wanting independence in my life.
Yeah.
So I went home 2 years after that, then a year after that, and I didn't go home for 4 years then. In those 4 years, I developed as a person, I changed, but then I went home after that.
Yeah.
I realized what I was missing.
Yeah.
Every time I go home now, I see, okay, we are here. We're kind of doing okay. We're developing a career, etc. You have those trade-offs. But what you're missing is much more than what you're getting. That's my...
I know. Family is family, right?
Yeah.
So it's tough. I don't know what the answer is, right? I think and then you just find ways to connect with your family to the best of your ability, whether it's visiting home, whether it's FaceTime, what you find ways to become involved in one another's lives, but
Yeah.
it's not easy.
And after losing my mother, I've realized maybe my father lives for 15 more years,
Yeah.
20 more years.
Yeah.
But in those 20 years, I only have 1 year with him.
Right.
Like
Right.
calls twice a week, thrice a week,
Yeah.
10 minutes here, 10 minutes. You don't
Yeah.
have a long time.
Yeah.
So that kind of, I'm, so I've lost a parent, so now how it feels like.
Yeah.
So I understand. It gets very difficult as well as when you think about it. Okay, so moving on.
Yes,
So,
yes. But we have a lot of
yeah,
shared experience,
yeah.
yes.
So, in your upbringing, right, like the some families are brought up differently. Some, like, they discipline their children. Some put them in rooms, ground them. What was your parents' discipline style when you went through things?
So they weren't super strict, but we had boundaries
Okay.
and we had rules. We would periodically get grounded if we broke a rule, but I would say for the most part, we really respected our parents, so we didn't really
Okay.
break those rules very
Okay.
often. I mean, aside from, I guess, some of the very natural, rebellious activity that can
Yeah.
happen as adolescents.
Yeah.
But I just remember, and even to this day, but even as teenagers, being very respectful of who they are and what they did and the life that they built for us and the privileges that we had. And they also they were kind of cool parents. Like all of our friends wanted to hang out at our house.
Okay.
So they were very welcoming, they were very caring, very thoughtful, very nurturing even with our friends.
Right.
But they were very clear on kind of what the guidelines were. But I would say we mostly respected them, so we didn't really get in trouble too much. But we did go through the normal, typical, adolescent, like not telling your parents the truth
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time, and many of which they
Yeah.
probably still don't know about to this
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
But I would say from that perspective, it was built on mutual respect, and we really did kind of fall in line.
And that kind of has shaped your career as well. The way, like, are you the same way with your kids? You give them space.
Yes, I think we are. And when we need to be firm about something, we are, and we will be. But for the most part, they are good kids, and they do their homework, and they manage their part-time job, and their academic commitments, and time management, and so if they occasionally, I don't know, let's use an example, their room is a nightmare. I will, instead of really getting down on them about those things, I'll pick and choose what's really important, right? Which
Okay.
is academics.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Yeah.
And they're okay there. So maybe I'll just shut the door and walk away and let them have a bit of a messy space. So
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
we really pick and choose our battles. Well, we don't really see my son very often because he's in Halifax. So he is very, very independent. But it is, adolescence really is about picking your battles, which is very similar to work.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. What do you need to
Yeah.
let certain things go if they're not a priority or they're not sort of a burning platform. And then really think about what are the things that you really want to fight for and you want to, that you have the most conviction about.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
No, so working part time is a new concept for this is mostly for the international community.
Yes.
Everyone, it's like it's going to be in English, everyone will see it.
Yeah.
But my audience, I realize, would mostly be students coming or like
Okay.
young graduates,
Yeah.
those kind of people. So the part time concept, if the
Yes.
family sees it, it's a new concept. We don't have
Yes.
that back home.
Right.
So, but it's really important for the overall development. I realize that here.
Yeah.
I told one of my professors, it's like, as the studying part, I can take care of it.
Yeah.
I can't take care of the working part. So he said, taking care of the working part is more important than the studying part.
Yeah.
And that, it makes sense now.
Yeah. You need
Yeah.
to have both, I think.
Yeah. And that you develop that here. Like
Yeah.
at back home, I don't know about other people, I was mostly pampered.
Yeah.
I never worked a day when I was in India.
Yeah.
When I came here, like I didn't tell my dad I wasn't working till 4 or 5 months
Yeah.
after I got my job.
Okay.
But it's
There are
good,
some
yeah.
pretty strong cultural beliefs though
Yeah.
about academics.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I see that and I understand that. But I think even having that work experience, so my son had, a few part-time jobs, and then going into university and he's in a co-op program. So they look at that work experience. So let's say he's applying for his first co-op position in first year university. He has an edge over
Because-
the other candidates who
Right.
haven't worked
Yeah.
because they can see that you have all of these life lessons, time management, ability to prioritize, sort of that action orientation, communication.
Yeah.
So it definitely is
Makes a
an
difference.
important part of your journey, right? In addition to academics.
That's good.
Yeah.
So we just move on to the next topic.
Sure.
That's your early career,
Yes.
like when you started. So what are some early jobs that you took on, like while you were studying and after graduating?
Okay. So during high school and university, and shortly after I graduated, the job market wasn't great. So I actually worked in retail throughout that time.
Okay.
So and I think with retail, which my son did a lot of as well, you know, you're learning how to communicate effectively. You're learning to sort of build a rapport with people you don't have a
Customer,
relationship
yeah,
with.
yeah.
Time management, some of those other things I just talked about. And for me, I was pretty much with the same company throughout that time because they had retail locations throughout Canada. So for me, it was really good in terms of building that foundation and having some experience on my resume. And then after I graduated, the economy wasn't great, so I was able to fall back into that that company. But then I took on more of a leadership position based on
Okay.
the experience
Yeah,
I had. And so I worked for a year after university managing a retail location.
Okay.
And I saved money to be able to travel through Europe for 6 months.
Nice.
So that was a very, very good experience. And I do highly recommend that if people can do some form of travel before they kind of settle down into their career job.
Why would you think that's essential? Like, what does that help do?
Yeah. So it was really about, you know, giving you perspective, opening your eyes to other cultures, other people, giving you an appreciation for the size and the magnitude of the world and different experiences
Okay.
that people have, being by yourself for an extended period, and having to manage on a really small budget. And I think, unlike now, I think part of the value of the experience when I went through it was there was no phones.
Yeah.
So we were really, truly cut off from everything and everyone, including our families. So we periodically call to let them know we were alive.
Were you by yourself or were you with?
I was with a friend.
Okay.
So we did it together. But it was just such an incredible, I mean, travel is learning, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
learning,
yeah.
absorbing, observing, taking in. And I think it teaches you a lot about yourself too, right? Because you have to deal with some situations that aren't easy, especially without having a
Yeah,
phone. You
yeah.
sometimes show up in a city, not having a booking. You know, you're searching for
Okay.
somewhere to stay. You're trying to navigate. Sometimes there's a language barrier. So it's a lot about resilience, adaptability, flexibility. So travel, and it doesn't have to be Europe. But for me,
Yeah.
it was Europe, and that was an excellent experience. But I think any travel can add all of those things, right, in that perspective.
I completely relate to that because I drove from Thunder Bay to Vancouver
Right.
and back here.
That's amazing.
Like this, you see differences as you change the states.
Yeah.
You see difference in culture, people,
Yeah.
clothes, cars, food. Everything changes in each province.
Yes.
So yeah, it
It's
makes
like Canada's very unique that way, right? Because
Yeah.
the geography is so large.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
16 hours of driving through the prairies and then reaching to Alberta using cowboy hats. I'd never seen them before. Like, of course, in
Right?
movies, but
Yes.
never in person.
Yes.
But it makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
when
And
see-
then you would have seen the mountains.
Then the-
and, yeah.
I think by far that's the most beautiful driver. I like driving.
It's a beautiful drive.
It's the best drive I've ever
Yeah,
had.
I would agree with you. We've done that drive with our kids actually second year of COVID.
Okay.
And they didn't realize what they were in for, and they forever, like you, appreciate that
Yeah.
experience.
And I was by myself. I had my music on. I was listening to
Yeah.
maybe a podcast or some good music
Yeah.
and just driving. It was so nice.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
still-
what a lovely memory. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's the economic climate is similar to now when you graduated. Like there are less
Yes.
jobs.
Yes.
People are struggling.
Yes.
They're trying to build their resumes, doing courses,
Yep.
but still not getting calls or jobs.
Yes.
What would your advice be at this point to those kind of individuals who are
Yep.
struggling?
So I think, which is what I did, is take a job that maybe isn't your desired job, but take a job that still allows you to get experience, because every job will teach you something.
Right.
Right? So that's what I did. Jobs weren't available necessarily in my field or my area of study. So I kind of, fell back into something that was available. But try and leverage that to the full extent, because you're still getting very important experience on your
Yeah.
resume. You're still diversifying your experience. You're still demonstrating that you have that work effort and that you're building some of those important skills that we just talked about. And something will come along.
Yeah.
So I would say be persistent, persevere, and maybe take that less desirable job, knowing that it's a building block to something better.
That's, yeah, I completely relate with that. But along with that, like,
Yeah.
we have pressures, right? Like, some people have spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars to come here,
Yes.
do their studies.
Yes.
Other families are depending on them. Not kind of depending, but they have some kind of expectations, if you may.
Right.
Right? How would you? So how do they handle the mental part?
Yeah.
Not just the, like, of course, money wise they won't be making as much. That's okay.
Yeah.
You'll all lived as students.
Yeah.
You can maintain the same lifestyle.
Yeah.
But the mental pressures, the family pressures, how do you
Yeah.
recommend, like, they look at those things?
Yeah. So I think, and again, I probably don't have an appreciation for some of the cultural sensitivities, but I think being honest is really important as well, because I think that would bring about some level of compassion and understanding. So I think really helping them understand that it's very important to have some kind of work rather than no work. And that in doing this, it also creates a really strong sense of humility, right? And you're still, even though you're doing this job that maybe isn't in the right field, you're still building that resilience, that perseverance, and a lot of jobs come about as a result of your network. They're not
Right.
just through applying as an unknown person, as an unknown entity, and then getting an interview, because I think you said a moment ago, sometimes you can't even get the interview.
Yeah.
So every job that you have and every experience you have in your life allows you to build that network of contacts.
Okay.
And you can use that network to help you with your professional life.
Okay.
So it's still, I think the message to parents and families is there's still value in what I'm doing. You just have to be patient.
All right. Because I have a roommate right now.
Yeah.
He went to India, and he decided he's gonna pack up and leave.
Okay.
He has his application applied. Like, he's in a good standing than many people whom I know of.
Yeah.
But he still decided, because he's not working. He did his master's from University of Ottawa in computer science,
Okay.
and it's been over a year he hasn't landed a job.
Okay.
He's doing something just for the sake of it, just to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So he's getting like depressed. He went home. He's seeing some therapist, like stuff.
Yeah.
But parents are supportive. It's his own mind
Well,
that's
that's great. So it's more pressure
himself.
that he's putting on
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going through our own challenges, right? Based on the economy and different things that are happening at work. I think you just have to move into this mindset of taking it one day at a time, right? And removing some of that pressure on yourself. And I received some really good advice recently, which is you can choose how you want to respond to the things that are happening to you, right? You can choose to be sad or discouraged, and I'm not suggesting
Right.
it's easy.
No,
We've
yeah.
all had tough
Yeah,
times,
100%,
right?
yeah.
But you can also decide very deliberately to choose optimism. And that's
Yeah.
sort of what I'm doing in my life, because I had different challenges personally and professionally, and it's advice that was shared with me. And once you embrace that and you kind of wake up each day with that mental state or that choice, because it is a choice.
Yeah.
The other thing is that's really helpful is for a few minutes each morning, doing a quick journal. And what some people do is they actually write down the negative stuff and how they're feeling. And then okay, I'm done. I've experienced it. I've labeled it. and now I'm going to close that book and I'm going to put it away and I'm going to choose optimism.
I actually did that while I was in school, like in my last year.
Yeah.
While I was applying for jobs and nothing was coming up.
Yeah.
So it was like in the height of COVID, when
Yes.
everything was closed down.
When it was doom and gloom
Yeah.
and it felt not great.
Then I was listening to YouTube videos and stuff like that. So I wrote it and burnt it.
Yes.
And that is another practice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a very similar concept, right? So that would be the advice that I would give. And and the other thing is, once you choose optimism and you start kind of living your life that way, it becomes easier because it's a
Right.
practiced
Yeah.
behavior, right? Yeah.
Coming back to this, I know we are short on time as well.
That's
So I'll
okay.
just come back to so when you got the job that you wanted to get after a year and a half,
Okay.
what made you choose that specific job? Was it the first job or you had a couple of options, you chose this? And why that job? Like
So are you talking about sort of my
professional job.
first
Professional
professional
job.
role?
Yeah,
So my first professional role was when I got back from the backpacking, and it was actually for Loblaws, and it
Okay.
was in supply chain and logistics,
yeah. Okay.
and it was an inventory control specialist, so very much an entry level
Okay.
position, and I was able to get that position because of my extensive retail experience, and not so much
Right.
that it was retail, but because of the skills and the behaviors that I had been able to develop over that time, which are highly transferable
Okay.
to many other jobs,
Right,
right? And
right.
so when you're interviewing and positioning yourself for roles, that's what you need to highlight.
Okay.
You need to highlight all of the skills and assets that are transferable to the position that you're applying for,
Okay.
and really very confidently speaking about why you think they're important and how they're an asset for the position that you're applying for. So I didn't have any experience in supply chain
Okay.
and logistics, but I think I came across so strongly in the interview. And also, you know, a lot of enthusiasm and energy helps. And talking about how much you want the role and why you want the role, all of those things are really important, right?
Okay.
I'll have to take a pause.
Give me one second. Come on in.
I didn't know that.
That's okay.
I just gave it.
Okay, thank you. We can put that over.
Let's- So that's when you got into the first job.
So basically, to answer your question, I sort of just fell into it.
Okay.
And as I was saying to you a couple of minutes ago about the importance of your network,
Yeah.
I got an interview for that position through someone that I knew socially.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was back then. Of course, there's no LinkedIn. You just
Correct.
family members talking to each
yeah,
other.
it was a friend of a friend,
Yeah.
and they knew me, you know, as sort of a bit more than an acquaintance. And they were looking for some good people, and she knew I was looking for a job, and she just took my resume in for me. So I still had to do all the work
Yeah.
to prepare for the interview, to sell myself, to bring my A game, but it was that in, right? Someone giving someone your resume is a big help. It kind of puts
I
you,
completely 100%.
right?
Yeah. And now that you have more resources, so people can reach out to different avenues as well, to
Right.
people in that industry through LinkedIn,
Right.
through cold emails, like
Yes.
how we just reach to the person, and then you can kind of make a rapport as well.
Correct. Yes.
So once you were in the first job,
Yep.
what kind of strategies or mentality or actions did you take that
Yep. To
to be
kind of-
successful in that role?
Yep. So I would say, I think, and you and I have talked about this before
Yeah.
as well, build relationships with as many people as possible. And especially all the time, but especially when you're young and you're trying to carve out that reputation, work extremely hard. So, you know, put in the hours while you can, especially, I think for most young people, they haven't started a family yet. So you have a bit more flexibility in terms of the hours that you can work. Those things together really help to build that reputation of credibility and reliability, which are huge, right? Make sure that you have a high degree of responsiveness to things that are, you know, coming across your desk, or even things that you're hearing peripherally that you can get involved in. And the big thing about being highly responsive is if you are really helpful to other people and you respond efficiently, when you need something, that reciprocity is there.
Okay.
So that's very important. And then I would say just, connecting with stakeholders, customers, and peers.
So something not talked about much is when fresh graduates come into the workspace, they're not acquainted with, I don't know if it's the right word, but office politics and
Yep.
those things that are not very out
Some
there.
of those, like,
They are
political
yeah, they are
undertones.
subtleties. How do you think they should address that? Because in the beginning you have no idea what's going on.
Right.
You're still trying to kind of figure the work part out first. Then
Yep.
although some people don't even want to get involved, but it's part of the game. You have to
Yeah.
learn how to kind of deal with people, understand different personalities.
Yep.
How do you think they should navigate and still like grow in their career
So-
without getting too involved?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to things like that, which is no different than if you were to move to a new team, even within the organization, right? Because you're going to have new people, new relationships. For me, it's about really observing
Okay.
and listening and trying to pick up on things and making those connections as much as you can, which is different, I think, for the younger generation, is coming into the office. Because
Right.
what we've lost is with everything being online for as long as, and we're still working hybrid, but we're more at home than we are in the office right now. When you're not in person with people, you can't see the visual cues. You can't see their expressions. You can't see their behaviors, their body language. So you will pick up on a lot of relationships, political undertones, some of those nuances that you just referred to, much more when you're coming in and you're seeing and interacting and observing than when you're online. So not that you have to come in 5 days a week, but I would say that helps to pick up on those things and to kind of set you off on the right path.
I did see some of my friends well who were working full time in the office, and then most was working from home. There has been personality differences. Like,
Yeah.
of course, you learn more once you're with people.
Yeah.
And like, I completely agree with you. Coming in at least early on, we should come more into the office.
Yeah.
That helps a lot more, even for your personal development and overall
Agreed.
career growth as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So when we start out, all of us like we're not making as much in terms of money.
Yep.
We have to manage it. You coming out as a student, you're making more than a student,
Yes.
but not as a grown adult.
Yes.
So how do you manage money once you start in the workforce, and how does that evolve with time?
Yeah. So I would say, we can't deny the fact that money is always a form of motivation, right?
Yeah.
For sure. But it does change over time, depending on your life stage and the plans that you're making. So initially, for me, money was very much about, forming a foundation, like
Right.
having the opportunity to buy a house, to get some stability, being able to pay a mortgage. But I think you can relate to this, but you're house poor, right? So
Yeah.
you're building this asset, so
Yeah.
it's a very smart thing to do to buy a home.